The girl sits on a luxurious chair, and those around her notice her unhappy appearance with alarm. Some people clench their fists, discussing the Duke's coldness and his harshness towards the lady. Two maids sympathetically talk about how they want to take care of the lady, seeing her suffering. However, the problem is that the lady has a terrible temper and reacts angrily to the words she hears. One of the maids muses that, with the power of a black dragon, she can hear all the conversations, but sees no point in saying anything, as an important person is about to appear. The girl suddenly lifts her head, hearing that the gentleman has returned. The girl hurries to the window, thinking about the reasons for her behavior, and about the person who cannot be excluded from the explanation. She watches with excitement the return of the owner of the house, Duke Akian. She is overcome with amazement when she realizes what is happening. One of the maids happily assumes that the lady is very fond of the Duke and suggests that she go and say hello. The girl looks out the window with determination, realizing that her father, who is the father of this body, has arrived. The girl falls to the floor, desperately resisting and frightening the maids with her stubbornness. She screams indignantly, categorically refusing to go. In the distant past, dragons guarded their empires, causing both fear and respect in people. Beyond these lands, there were even more powerful and incredible dragons. Wherever these creatures passed, not a single blade of grass remained, because they were absolutely merciless and destroyed everything in their path. Neither humans, nor elves, nor dwarves, nor even 5 dragons together could stop this powerful black dragon, who easily dealt with any opponents. It seemed that he was doomed to remain forever a great disaster for the whole world. In the midst of battle, the knight aims at the dragon's left eye, where, according to legend, his destiny is hidden, although people could not know this secret. After a hard and bloody battle, the knight, wounded, admits how difficult this battle was. An enraged dragon, consumed by magical rage, unleashes a torrent of anger on the enemy, considering the person insignificant and useless. A wounded knight, covered in blood as if under a curse, hears a threat that the descendants of the enemy will cut off his breath if he opens his eyes again. A huge black dragon, bound in magical chains, was doomed to be what he became from birth, and feels the injustice of his fate. The man leaves with a cold gaze, and the air rings with a vow of inevitable revenge. 2 maids, overcome with anxiety and sadness, witness the promise that when the seal falls, retribution will begin. In the funeral hall, among white lilies, mourners bend over the coffin where the girl rests, and a prophecy is heard about the death of not only the enemy, but also his descendants. A girl in a black dress lies among flowers, and at this moment the certainty sounds that retribution will be carried out with one's own hands. Rage flares in the girl's eyes, and an uncontrollable desire to destroy everyone around her sounds in her soul. Suddenly she rises from the coffin, causing amazement and bewilderment among those around her. The girl looks at her hands in confusion, not understanding what is happening to her. Panic erupts as everyone realizes the lady has come back to life and calls for a doctor immediately. She notes that the merging of soul and body took longer than expected, and only now has she been able to move normally. Despite some heaviness in her body, she feels that she was still able to return. The girl looks in the mirror with displeasure, realizing that her appearance completely matches the hero's, and sighs heavily at this similarity. No one has yet realized that the soul in this body was replaced. Even the hero himself did not notice the changes. The girl reflects on how strange it is to be the hero's daughter and yet receive less warmth from him than from a stranger, since family should be a support system. Memories of her past family make her feel like they were more like strangers than real loved ones. In the end, she decides not to pay attention to it and easily lets go of the heavy thoughts. This body now combines the legacy of the greatest hero and the catastrophic power hidden within. In her dreams, the heroine imagines how one day she will force the hero to bow before her and become the head of the house. She happily decides that her first goal is to conquer this household. Suddenly, she remembers that the first thing she needs to do is deal with the current state of affairs. The girl resolutely begins to examine her new body to understand its capabilities. Ever since she took over this body, magic has been unavailable to her, and her mana feels blocked, as if it is being held back by a huge dam, perhaps due to the body's young age. The girl studies her stats with interest, expecting the hero's daughter to have above-average stats, but sees strange numbers in front of her. She stares at the screen in confusion, realizing she is technically alive but doesn't understand why her charm is so high. In a panic, she notices that she has no mana at all and cannot believe that the hero's youngest daughter's stats are so terrible. The girl breathes heavily, holding back her emotions, and suddenly begins to cough up blood. She looks at her bloody hands in horror, not understanding why this is happening, and the maid calls her in alarm. The maids rush to her, begging her not to cough and not to sit on the cold floor, and urgently call a doctor to help the lady. The girl is laid on the bed. She senses something ominous in what is happening and cannot shake the feeling that all this is familiar to her. It suddenly dawns on her that her illness is incurable, a discovery that leaves her in shock. The mysterious hooded man reflects on how he is considered all-knowing and how his words could cause someone to become a lowly being. In frustration, he sends someone to the other end of the continent, not wanting to hear any more about the prophecy. The girl with green eyes realizes that her opponent knew about her transfer into this body, and now she needs to find him to get a clue. She screams in despair about her incurable illness, causing panic among those around her. Daphne suspiciously asks what kind of illness she really has, waiting for an answer. The two maids, confused, explain that their mistress used to hate even the mention of illness and are now afraid of her reaction. The maids recall with alarm that their previous mistress often tormented them, and now they are trying to make sure that there is nothing dangerous around. The girl with green eyes learns that her disease is called black butterfly disease and is surprised by the name. Information from an encyclopedia comes to mind, which says that the black butterfly disease is considered a curse of black magic, and its cause is unknown. There is still no cure for this disease, but only half of the heroine's wing turned black. She reflects that death occurs when all 4 wings turn black, and wonders why she died so early. One of the maids suggests that something special happened then, because the mistress's condition suddenly worsened. Daphne remembers how the maids used to worry about even her slight cough, and finds it strange. She realizes that even before the transmigration of souls, her body was already dead, and wonders if someone killed her. Thoughts lead to the fact that the memories of those around were erased, and only black magicians could do such a thing. A figure in a black cloak appears, and it becomes clear that black magicians are most likely behind all of this. Daphne concludes that her body was a target and asks if anyone outside the estate knew about her return to life, but is told no. The maid explains that they were told to keep silent about her condition because she could die again, and the heroine herself mentally notes the rudeness of the one who gave such an order. The girl clutches her pillow and reflects that the black magicians don't yet know about her return to life, so she shouldn't fear murder anytime soon, but their motives seem unclean to her. Overcome with irritation, she hits the pillow, and the maid watches her outburst with surprise. An elf with green hair enters the room, introducing himself as Dr. Tati from the Insiha Mountains. Dr. Tati believes that all the difficulties of the journey to the capital were worth it, because the capital's nobles truly live in luxury. He reflects that even rich people cannot cope with incurable diseases, and if they try to force him to cure the disease, he will have to run away. The doctor decides that he will first gain the child's trust and then proceed with his plans. Touching the door, he suddenly feels a familiar dark energy, which makes him uneasy. A terrifying dragon appears before him, but the girl calmly greets the guest. The doctor, horrified, wonders why this mad dragon is here. Eventually, the girl drags the confused doctor inside the room. The doctor anxiously asks if the girl knows who he is, and receives confirmation that he has been mistaken for Lord Celis. Daphne exudes a majestic and terrifying aura that can be felt even from another continent, and only Lord Celis is capable of such a thing. The doctor, kneeling, agrees to become the personal physician of this body, starting from today. The girl says her name is Daphne and asks to be addressed as such, which surprises the elf. She wonders why the great dragon would be in a human body, but finds no answer. The doctor explains that for him this is entertainment, because he wanted to at least once experience the world as an ordinary person, and therefore hid his magical power. The elf admits that he immediately felt the dragon's energy, because only elves are able to understand this, and other races have no idea about it. The elf reminds that this body suffers from an incurable disease, and now his task is to try to cure the black butterfly's disease. The girl asks with disbelief if he is sure of the diagnosis, since she considers herself special. She comes to the conclusion that the disease is indeed a curse, and wonders why her body was cursed. The girl reflects that her young body could not have done anything bad to deserve such punishment. The elf admits that, strictly speaking, this body has done nothing wrong. Pointing to the coat of arms with swords and wings, someone remembers that he was admitted as a hero. In the darkness, the hooded figure desperately feels the injustice, because for a moment of weakness in the light they want to take his life. Clenching his bloody fist, he vows not to forget the humiliation and to take revenge. The divided background makes it clear that the sun symbolizes the hero and the night the black magician. A young man with green eyes explains that the hero Akion killed a black magician and was cursed, and that the Akion family cannot bear this curse. The green-eyed girl wonders in confusion why the curse only affected this body. The elf, he notes with a slight grin that Daphne ended up in this body without knowing anything about it. Information emerges that the hero has 4 children, including Daphne. The first is Rach, the second is Beefear. The third child is Arius, and Daphne turns out to be the only real, non-adopted child in the family. Daphne is shocked by the realization that her body is cursed and dying because of the hero, and receives confirmation of this. She is furious and indignant that the hero has never visited her, and the elf calmly explains that the hero simply does not love Daphne, and nothing can be done about it. The elf, kneeling before the girl, explains that after her birth, the hero's wife died. Daphne wonders in bewilderment if this is the whole reason for her suffering. The girl resolutely demands to open the door, not wanting to put up with such a fate. Consumed with anger, she proposes to punish the hero, who turned out to be worse than any animal. The vassals of the Archduchy of Akion treated the hero, who stood apart from their circle, with distrust and coldness. Although the nobles had sworn allegiance to the ducal house, the hero remained a bastard to them, and only through his skill with the sword and the title of hero received from the emperor was he able to take his place. The hero found himself at the head of the assembly, but his position as archduke did not guarantee recognition from the others. The vassals did not consider him their true master, which caused discontent and questions among the nobility. In the midst of the discussion, one of the nobles expressed indignation that warehouses were being opened to ordinary people, considering this the business of the central government. Marquis Giron, the hero's confidant, anxiously reminded him that his subjects could die of hunger if measures were not taken. The man worriedly explains that half of the Archduchy's territory is occupied by northern mountains, and that the few garden plots have dried up due to drought, and he wonders about the choices of ordinary people. The enraged count declares that if the common people are eaten, then that is their fate, causing shock among those present. The man admits that the support is intended to maintain the numbers of ordinary people, but considers it an extreme measure. His gaze reflects the thought that it does not matter how well His Excellency understands the life of the common people. Another interlocutor mentally makes a note of the sarcastic remark, mocking the Archduke's childhood spent on the streets. He recalls how recently the son of Marquis Isaac held a lavish engagement ceremony, after which the castle burned down. The enraged commoners, unable to bear the Marquis's luxury, set fire to his mansion, and the flames engulfed the building. The secretary, relieved, suggests that the contentious issue be considered resolved, hoping to bring the tense discussion to an end. In a fit of emotion, someone grips the table with force, leaving cracks in it, and the assistant, in a panic, advises him to loosen his grip, complaining about the difficulties of the meeting. One of the participants, hearing a sharp sound, turns around in surprise, not understanding what happened. The little princess enters the room with a determined look, attracting the attention of those around her with her appearance. She addresses the hero with stubbornness and pride, reminding him of the long separation. The princess sits down at the negotiating table, declaring her intention to meet with the hero, causing surprise among those present. The hero watches the princess's unexpected behavior with bewilderment, not understanding the reason for her visit. Daphne accuses those gathered of having her body born without her consent, shocking everyone with her statement. She adds that she was cursed because of this, and a tense silence falls over the room. The princess indignantly demands an explanation, believing that the hero is not showing himself to be a caring father enough. The hero asks with a cold smile if she holds a grudge against him. Daphne scornfully remarks that he is not even worthy of her anger. She firmly declares that she has come to declare war on him, throwing her pen on the table. The stone-faced hero swears that he will never die and will survive no matter what, clutching a broken glass in his hand. Two observers on the side are surprised that the hero does not look angry at all. The gray-haired man explains that His Excellency's feelings were suppressed by the curse of a black magician, so he never expressed emotions openly and carefully hid them. The blonde man with the scar holds a pen thoughtfully, and those around him wonder what he might be thinking about, because he is not as indifferent as he seems. On the throne, surrounded by candles and black flowers, sits the only blood heir of a Kion, immersed in dark thoughts. The green-eyed baby, born at the cost of another life, was cursed and doomed to die soon. Due to constant pain, the girl grew irritable and often insulted the servants who surrounded her. As a result of her bad temper and loneliness, she was moved to a separate annex of the castle, separating her from the others. The green-eyed girl, whom everyone thought was dead, suddenly came back to life and stunned everyone with her appearance. An elderly man, standing by the window, has a premonition that unusual events await him ahead. The princess smiles with relief, feeling the weight finally lifted from her soul. Despite the lack of reaction from the hero, the girl is pleased because her goal was to declare war. The green-haired elf cheerfully asks if he can be free. In a panic, the elf justifies that he is not trying to escape, because if everything depended only on him, he would devote his life to Lady Daphne, but he has other obligations. Titi, with a slight smile, admits that Lady Daphne no longer needs his treatment and promises to be more quiet. The girl explains that the elf's death was not caused by a curse, and that his wings were only half blackened because someone killed this body. Hearing about someone's death, Tati asks with fear if it is really a murder, and tenses up internally. He anxiously asks if they are going to force him to investigate this case, since the most he can do is contact the Information Guild. Hearing the request, the elf happily notes Lady Daphne's concern for lower creatures, but is surprised when she asks him to prepare medicine for her. The final image shows a magic potion that can restore the health of this body. Tati explains with a smile that he is just a pretend doctor, not a pharmacist, and shows off his medical bag, irritating the woman. The next second, he enthusiastically agrees to change his profession and become a pharmacist if circumstances require it. Daphne muses to herself that changing her major is quite difficult, but a look of determination appears in her eyes. She looks forward with confidence, realizing that now all she has to do is become stronger. One of the maids anxiously asks her friend if she feels the same way as she does. The maids notice that the princess has become somewhat strange lately, observing her changed behavior. Upon awakening, not a single thing in the room was broken, which left the servants perplexed. Her manner of speech became strange and adult, as if an old woman had taken up residence in the body of a child. Today, she went to the training ground alone, forbidding the servants to follow her, and is perhaps training to attract the attention of her master. Recently, she even tried to find the owner during his meeting, and at night in her sleep she muttered the word hero. The girl sits down on the floor with determination in her eyes, thinking about creating a vessel for mana. She realizes that her 0 mana is the result of a curse, and decides to use the dragon mana sealed within her soul. A shining crystal appears in her hand, as creating a mana vessel is the first step. Daphne plans to swallow a mana-filled mana stone, even though the method may seem terrifying. The girl resolutely swallows the stone, and magical energy begins to flow around her. Suddenly, a sharp pain pierces her, and she is surprised at how excruciating this process is. Daphne gathers all her willpower, not allowing herself to give up. She slowly channels the mana swirling in her chest through the clogged blood vessels. Clenching her fist, the little girl forces herself to be patient despite the tension. Almost completing the process, she suddenly feels a sharp pain and surprise. Black liquid comes out of her mouth, leaving a stain on the floor. The girl, breathing heavily, looks in surprise at the message about the creation of the mana vessel, realizing that her efforts were crowned with success. Hope lights up in her eyes as she realizes that she can increase her magical power if she trains her mana in this way. Daphne rejoices in her success, feeling amazing and invincible. Suddenly she notices strange marks on her face and is surprised by what is happening. She looks warily at the black spot on the floor, guessing that it could be the trace of a curse. Deciding to preserve the dangerous substance, Daphne carefully pours it into a glass container to ask adults for advice later. In her mind, she makes plans to accumulate magical power and dreams of revenge, but suddenly she is distracted by an unexpected blow. The girl indignantly holds the back of her head, stunned by the sudden blow and the appearance of the boy. The boy asks her with displeasure what she is doing on the training ground, and she looks at him defiantly. Arius sternly states that she is a problem and demands that she leave immediately. The boy is surprised by her silence and considers these to be her last words, but she only looks at him in response. The girl clenches her fists and walks forward, and the boy notices that she has become strange and looks like she has been practicing. Arius mockingly notes that she still looks like a living corpse, watching her stubbornness. The boy mockingly says that no matter how hard Daphne tries, she cannot avoid death, and recalls her past antics with the maids. The girl, her gaze downcast, admits that such behavior is entirely expected from the hero's child. Suddenly she strikes back, suggesting that he start by getting the boy to accept him. Arius is stunned, holding his cheek, and the girl calmly explains that it was just a return favor. The boy is confused and indignant at how she dared to hit her own older brother. Arius asks in surprise if he really is an older brother to her. Daphne resentfully states that she never had such an ill-mannered older brother as this boy. She remembers how in the past he lived alone and did not know what a family was, asking himself this question. Arius saw that despite quarrels and difficulties, people always dined together. Even if they were angry with each other, they did not turn away and cared for each other. The family he observed always valued each other, no matter what. The girl looks at the boy reproachfully, reminding him that if they were a family, he would be there for her in difficult times and not ignore her. The boy irritably replies that he doesn't consider her his family either, and tension builds between them. He accuses the girl of being a disgrace to the family, demanding that she pull herself together. Daphne responds by getting angry and demanding that he leave the training ground, showing his character. The boy asks defiantly if she really wants to fight him, and the girl mockingly doubts his strength. The boy, flushed with anger, swings his arm, preparing for another quarrel. An adult man with a stern expression intervenes in what is happening, demanding an explanation. The red-haired boy irritably remarks that the moment is extremely inopportune, and the green-eyed girl looks at the stranger in surprise. Arius, having received several blows, admits with annoyance that it was not a fight, but a one-sided beating, and indignantly turns to the girl. The man stops the quarrel, sternly saying that this is enough, and stands between the children. The girl, looking offended, hears that the adult is disappointed in both of them and mentally regrets that she did not have time to strike another blow. Daphne is perplexed to realize that fighting on the sacred training ground without swords is an act that causes her internal protest. A cold-faced man allows the children to fight each other, handing them swords. Daphne is surprised that they are taught swordsmanship and encouraged to duel, finding the activity exciting. The red-haired boy confidently takes up the wooden sword, anticipating an easy victory over an inexperienced opponent. The girl with green eyes, clutching a sword, mentally condemns the rudeness and stupidity of her older brother, considering him hopeless. She looks at him defiantly and demands that the conversation stop, calling him to action. He wonders if he was too strict, but is immediately convinced that the young lady's behavior has indeed gone beyond the pale. It is remembered that this heiress is accustomed to clashing with the maids and causing problems for the knights, despite her status, and even in the family she is considered a disadvantage. She recently burst into the Duke's conference room, and now she appears more and more often at the training grounds, disrupting the usual order there. Lord Arius, known for his kindness and warmth, will likely only give a gentle reprimand. The looks of those around him are full of disapproval, because they consider what is happening to be nothing more than the training of a spoiled child, enjoying the family prestige. The man with white hair notices that everyone has gathered to watch this unusual spectacle. Daphne, who had never trained in fencing, confidently takes up a wooden sword, causing surprise among everyone present. Lord Arius is shocked and cannot believe his eyes, wondering how this is possible. Celis, in human form, swings his sword with a cheeky grin, not paying much attention to it. The old man, with a thoughtful look, doubts whether in front of him is really the swordmaster everyone is talking about. Celis is indignantly struck for touching someone else's sword without permission, despite her dragon power. Having been struck for the first time in his life, Celis ponders the consequences in confusion and anger, with blood on his face. The old man promises to teach Celis the true meaning of the sword if she is truly interested. Flashbacks to the past reveal that the old man was a very impudent man, and the narrator did not consider herself weak enough to learn to wield a sword. She touches her forehead with a slight smile, noting to herself how much she likes the confidence in the old man's eyes. Threats and ironic remarks are heard around the table, and the atmosphere is filled with tense anticipation and light mockery. This is how fencing training begins, filled with strict instructions and attempts to adopt the correct stance. The teacher demands purity in every movement, and the student struggles to contain irritation and fatigue. Even the birds on the branch become witnesses to the debates about the dragon's abilities and the endless tasks of practicing strikes. The exhausted student sitting on the ground hopefully wonders if she is already closer to the title of swordmaster. The old man smirks and remarks that even 100 years is not enough for training, and the dragon responds by thinking about how people underestimate his strength. The teacher, with a touch of irony, encourages his student, determined to see her become a master of the sword at all costs. Despite the difficulties, Celis admits that she doesn't hate this life, and even the fatigue from training brings her pleasure. She smiles with genuine joy, realizing that the training turned out to be much more interesting than she expected. A year of hard work passes, and the heroine enthusiastically calls for a teacher. Entering the room, she is surprised to find that the teacher is still sleeping, which seems unusual to her. The girl bursts into the room with enthusiasm, full of strength and determination to start a new day. She grips the old man's hand tightly, certain that she should be a master swordsman by now. A look of concern appears in her eyes as she wonders if she has missed something important. The old man, sitting on his bed, weakly opens his eyes and asks in surprise if he is dead. She realizes that human life is too short compared to her own. Standing by the window, the girl bitterly thinks about what to do next if the one who promised to see her success left so suddenly. Sitting alone at sunset, she realizes for the first time how lonely she was. At a grave adorned with modest flowers, she reflects on the traditions of the people and chooses flowers nearby, not knowing whether the departed will like them. After the loss, she goes into the mountains, devoting herself to grueling training in order to forget everything that connected her with the man. The tears dry on her cheeks even as she looks at the grave, and the pain gradually gives way to emptiness. Remembering the past, she takes the sword in her hands with a challenge and a smile, ready to prove her strength. A flash of anger and resentment is reflected in the girl's bright green eyes when she demands attention. A duel rages in the training yard, where wooden swords clash with unexpected force. Daphne strikes a perfect pose, displaying confidence and determination in every move. Arius is stunned by a heavy blow that knocks him off balance. In the heat of battle, Daphne forgets an important detail, which suddenly leaves her confused. She ends up on the ground, and the audience watches in amazement at the unexpected outcome of the fight. The red-haired boy turns to the captain in confusion, not understanding what just happened. The captain is surprised and tries to understand whether he really saw everything correctly during training. Arius exclaims indignantly that he has never seen a 5-year-old child wield a sword so skillfully. A look of suspicion appears in his eyes, because the girl claimed that she had never held a sword. He was amazed that her vertical strike was far more skillful than his own, despite years of training. The boy with the wooden sword bitterly reflects that perhaps it is all a matter of blood relationship, even though he himself has worked hard all this time. His hand grips the sword with annoyance and silent disappointment. The captain receives an order to call a doctor and carry away the girl, who has lost consciousness from fatigue. Arius decides that from this day on the captain will train him personally as an exclusive instructor. Daphne, while being held by an adult, mentally promises herself not to get into such unpleasant situations again. One of the maids reflects on her weakness, wondering why she lost consciousness from a single blow, and wondering how to develop endurance and strength. The girl recalls that in her past life, as a dragon, she possessed incredible strength and endurance, and now she doesn't know how to train in a human body. The maid reports that the knight's commander wants to see the girl after she awakens, and she reacts to this news with surprise and disbelief. The girl reasons that she doesn't like the commander, but meeting him is a matter of politeness, and his strength could be useful to her. She decides that now is the perfect moment and agrees to invite the commander to her place. The commander of the knights comes to the girl to ask her an important question. He asks if Daphne has ever trained with a sword, and she admits that she hasn't, at least not in this body. The commander is surprised by her abilities, considering them an innate talent. He asks if she plans to continue learning swordsmanship, and the girl replies that she would like to, if not for one serious problem. Daphne explains that her body is too weak, as even one blow from the sword leaves her exhausted. The commander advises training endurance through running, as it is the simplest and most effective way. The commander notes with regret that the girl could have become the hero's successor. He apologizes for his words and, bowing, leaves so as not to disturb her rest. The girl clutches the blanket, struck by the thought that she could become the hero's successor. Daphne is indignant, considering the commander crazy for comparing her to a hero because she considers herself a much greater being. Meanwhile, the girl, irritated by the importunity of those around her, continues to run at full speed. Daphne notes that running really turned out to be effective, because at first she couldn't even walk a quarter of a lap, but as her endurance increased, it became impossible to stop. Despite her fatigue and the servants' attempts to stop her, she stubbornly continues training, threatening to run even more laps. After 15 days, her endurance reaches 30 points, and her strength increases to 4. She rejoices in her successes and makes plans for quick revenge, pleased with the pace of progress. The girl admits that Teddy's potion also helped her, although it can cause side effects, and notices that her stamina increases faster after using it. Daphne hopes that she will soon be able to hold a sword again when she is spoken to. The man reminds her that she has been running for 15 days straight, and they continue training together. He notes that with her appearance, the knight's morale has increased significantly and expresses gratitude. Daphne is surprised, not understanding what the knight's morale has to do with her. The man explains that her persistence in training, despite her weakness, inspires the knights. She notices that the training ground used to be empty in the mornings, but now there are a lot of people there. Daphne reflects with irony that the knights' morale was boosted by the little girl, even though they should have been training without her. The girl looks forward with determination when asked if she wants to become stronger. She wonders why it isn't obvious. Otherwise, she wouldn't try so hard. Only a few in the estate know about her curse, and even the youngest Lord, Arius, believes it to be an incurable disease. The girl understands that she will have to fight pain and injustice that no one can understand. The man asks her not to give up, expressing support and sympathy. He considers that it might be rude to say such words to a girl with a predetermined fate, but he sincerely hopes that she can cope. The man confidently says that he believes in her success, despite the seeming absurdity of his words. The girl confirms with a smile that she will definitely become stronger. She proudly states that she never knew the word give up. Exhausted from the training, she falls to the ground, wondering whether she should give up today, since she only ran 16 out of 20 laps. A boy with a wooden sword approaches her, urging her not to give up and to continue sparring. The girl, despite fatigue and traces of a struggle on her face, agrees to finish their duel, which they were unable to finish last time. Daphne falls to the ground in exhaustion, unable to continue training, and angrily points out her exhausted state. She admits that she has terrible stamina, and the fatigue after running in circles completely exhausted her. Unable to support someone's stubbornness, she asks to be left alone and go away. Arius notices that she has become healthier than before, which surprises her and makes her think. She admits that the hero's child is not just for show, and despite the improvements, she still lacks a lot, but she is determined to continue. The boy indignantly refuses to train with anyone else and insists that she adjust to his pace, but the girl firmly repeats her refusal. He explains passionately that he just wants to see her fighting stance. Daphne reacts to his ardor with mockery, mentally calling him a scumbag. She clarifies that it was just a figure of speech and suggests that if he wants to learn, she should teach him, not spar. Daphne smiles and encourages the boy to repeat a simple phrase after her to begin learning. The red-haired boy, confused and irritated, cannot believe the proposal he heard. The girl with green eyes, crossing her arms, mockingly doubts the abilities of her interlocutor and suggests that he stay with his sword. Arius, depressed and angry, hears that if he doesn't correct the mistakes of his youth, they will remain with him for the rest of his life, but if he doesn't want to change, no one will force him. His hand is clenched into a fist. He is silent, but inside he is struggling with himself, not daring to admit his weakness. Daphne, smiling, says that she does not hear his muttering, and since he has no words, she leaves. Finally, the boy, blushing with embarrassment and anger, breaks down and asks for help, demanding that he not be refused. Daphne talks confidently about upbringing with a smile, causing the boy to be perplexed and think about her oddity because she is younger than him. Arius, clutching a wooden sword, tries to follow the instructions but has difficulty with his posture and hand position. An argument breaks out when the boy is irritated and doesn't understand why he can't do it, and the girl looks at him reproachfully. The girl energetically demonstrates the correct sword strike, urging you to watch carefully. Arius is amazed by her perfect stance and skill, wondering how a 5-year-old can wield a sword so well. He hopes that if he can defeat such a strong opponent as Daphne and rise higher, he will definitely achieve success. Daphne, kneeling, struggles to hold back the blood flowing from her mouth and looks exhausted after the fight. The green-eyed girl asks Tatey carefully about the possible side effects of the treatment, and he replies that it all depends on her physical condition. The elf in duck pajamas assures him that nothing worse than mild indigestion will happen, but the girl, choking and coughing up blood, mentally accuses him of charlatanism. She passes out and wakes up in her room, watching the morning light stream in through the window. The girl, clenching her fists, decides to first find and teach Tate a lesson for his words. Suddenly, she is surprised to feel unusually cheerful and fresh after waking up. Her hand lies on the bed, and in her thoughts there is anxiety that this strange feeling could be something unusual. The elf, with a slight smile, assures that everything that is happening is part of the treatment, and the girl with green eyes begins to doubt his quackery. 3 young men in uniform stop her with alarm, telling her that she cannot continue. One of the young men, explains that her condition does not allow her to train, since just yesterday she lost consciousness and excessive stress could be harmful. Despite her protests, the young man insists that she return to her room, not giving in this time. Daphne, her eyes shining and her voice determined, refuses to give in and is surprised that anyone would dare to block her path. The young man panics and justifies himself by saying that everything is being done for her safety, but he is frightened by her murderous gaze. The servants, bowing their heads, declare that they will not retreat and are ready to stand to the end if necessary. One of them whispers that dying is too much, and the other suggests simply forcing her to retreat because she cannot win. The servants anxiously ask if she really wants this, not hiding their excitement. The girl with a sword in her hands promises to do everything quickly and painlessly, and the servants, horrified, ask who gave her the real weapon. Daphne, sword in hand, looks sternly at the servants, who, trembling and hugging each other, justify their concern for her. The white-haired man watches the scene in surprise, wondering what happened to his subordinates. The senior servant, with a serious face, reminds them that the Count has entrusted them with an urgent matter and reports that permission has been received to involve personnel if necessary. The white-haired man questions the urgency of the hunt with the Count's youngest son, noting that no permission had been received for such a task. He explains that he and the vice-captain are helping the young master with his training, and their departure will disrupt his education. The senior servant mockingly questions the importance of these, in his opinion, meaningless trainings. The man reminds with a cold smile that no one would risk the Count's wrath over one boy. The girl with the sword understands that all this fuss was arranged in order to get rid of Arius's people and strengthen the position of the heir. She contemptuously reflects on the baseness and pity of people, deciding that she should not interfere in their intrigues because they can handle it themselves. Arius, hiding behind the wall, watches what is happening with alarm and hears his name. He stands by the column, his head bowed, and remembers how he is despised for his origins, considered unworthy even to be called a master. A man, Daphne with green eyes, appears before the servant, who, frightened, does not understand why she is here, and she, with cold irony, reminds him of his dreams of her death. The man, Arius, holding back tears, thinks that he himself can say a few words in response. His eyes reflect the realization that he is not just Arius, but Arius Acheon, and this fills him with new meaning. Even without blood relation or direct connections, he feels like a part of this family, watching what is happening from behind the column. The girl with a dark smile threatens that if anyone continues to deny the obvious, she will personally arrange a meeting with the hero. The red-haired boy, hiding behind the wall, quickly apologizes and admits his mistake. The girl with a cold smile promises that from now on they will be more careful. She reproachfully notes that simple apologies are not enough, otherwise there would be no punishments. The three servants in green uniforms lower their heads, not knowing what punishment awaits them. Daphne, in a dark aura, demands that they bow their heads at her feet. A bird sits quietly on a branch, and a group of students bending over to the ground tensely crouch under its observation. The man notes the girl's success with approval and then announces that those who failed to prove themselves earlier should continue to stand silently. The green-eyed girl reflects ironically on how everyone around her is equally insignificant and wonders why there is so much status discrimination here. Daphne is determined to not stand idly by while someone bullies the weak in front of her when suddenly someone calls her name. The girl looks in surprise at the bouquet of white lilies held out to her, not expecting such a gesture. Blushing, the boy with the bouquet quickly explains that this is not a gift or gratitude at all, but simply a sign that he is glad of her safe return. A red-haired boy, looking down in embarrassment and holding a bouquet of lilies, reflects on how he has never been ashamed of being an adopted son. He remembers how his mother always said that he was her pride, and these words warmed his heart. However, moments come to mind when those around him claimed that he was nothing in the Acheon family, that he would soon be kicked out and laughed at. He remembers his childhood in the slums, when he wouldn't even have a name without the Acheon family. He was haunted by the fear that perhaps his father thought the same way as everyone else. But then comes a moment when the boy, Arius Acheon, begins to realize his true worth. Daphne speaks her words with confidence, leaving no one the opportunity to object. The red-haired boy feels happy to be accepted as a family member and a brother. He recalls that Daphne's words were much less affectionate as a child, but he also admits his mistakes. A little embarrassed, he tries to find the words to express his feelings. Daphne angrily asks him to stop his crazy antics and is surprised by the news she hears. Arius, the green-eyed girl, muses that Arius probably feels guilty about her fainting and wants to apologize, and decides to accept it just this once. She extends her hand and accepts the bouquet of white lilies, thanking him for them. Holding flowers, she explains that if someone has done wrong, they should apologize, no matter who they are. She feels satisfaction from admitting her guilt and pride in having been able to overcome her shame and apologize. Daphne assures that all this together forms a real pride. She asks with a smile if he is willing to give up his ego for something greater. Arius admits she is right, but notes that hearing it from her makes him nervous. The girl remembers how in the past all creatures rejected her, considering her to blame for everything, and she often thought that her words were meaningless. Arius sheepishly apologizes for making her tense and promises to be more careful in the future. For Daphne, this is the first time someone has actually accepted her words, and she is surprised that things are different now. Two men from the outside note that the two are very close to each other. A month passes and the girl is happy that her indicators have improved and she no longer loses consciousness so often. Daphne decides it's time to try sparring again and considers inviting Arius to join her when he arrives. From this point on, Daphne and Arius begin training together, spending a lot of time side by side. At first, she was irritated by his talkativeness, but soon Arius's constant talking began to seem funny to her. Now that Arius is away, Daphne feels a strange emptiness and wonders if this is what they call a connection, realizing that she still has much to learn about the world. Suddenly, Daphne's name is called and she becomes wary, not understanding what is happening. Someone suggests that she try to make friends with the elf, who is trembling with excitement at this moment, while Daphne is sitting on his back. Daphne reproaches the elf for giving her the medicine without explaining the side effects, and he justifies that she simply did not listen to him. Despite the good results, Daphne cannot let go of the situation because the elf ignored her call 3 times and the maid was unable to contact him. Daphne decides that she will have to learn magic herself, because without a magical summoning, the elf continues to avoid her. The elf panicked and justified himself by saying that he was too busy preparing the medicine and could not disobey. With tears in his eyes, the elf complains that Daphne is too rude to him and constantly threatens him, confessing his resentment. Daphne watches his reaction in confusion, not understanding what just happened. In despair, Taddy justifies herself, blaming her other personality and vowing to get rid of it, hitting her forehead on the floor. The girl, with a cold expression on her face, mentally condemns the elf, considering him worthless and noting that even among the insane elves, such a level of madness is rare. With a bandage on his forehead, Tate reflects that he is indeed worried about the current situation, but considers it fair payback for a month and a half of ignoring him. A grim determination appears in his gaze as he considers a radical way to solve the problem. The illustration explains that for elves, the life aura is like a heart, connecting them to nature and to each other. If this aura is cut off, the elves become rejected by nature and turn into helpless creatures. Teddy, justifying his actions, admits that he lost his mind for a moment and begs for his life aura to be preserved. The girl asks to bring her a mana stone filled with his magic, and the elf is surprised by such a demand. Daphne explains that she can only accumulate mana through training, so she plans to use some of his power, and the elf anxiously wonders if it is strange to give his mana to a dragon. Teddy agrees to fulfill the request, deciding to save herself first and then think about the consequences, and hears that at least 100 such stones will be needed. He notes with confusion that collecting 100 mana stones at once is nearly impossible, as even his own mana has limits, and wonders if it's worth measuring where its limit is. Daphne, even in a luxurious dress, demands that the elf show her the medicine, and he, lost in thought, prepares for a difficult situation. Teddy, with green hair and a sly smile, says that he has made several potions, but the rest are not yet finished, and shows a vial with magical contents. He explains that it is a curse-breaking potion and draws it from the bottle, much to the girl's delight. The girl asks in surprise how long the potion lasts, and the elf answers with a smile that it only lasts 10 seconds. Suddenly, Teddy, with a wide smile and shining eyes, says that he has done all he could, and the remaining tasks are still ahead. He happily shows that his magic is complete and says that it was only 10 seconds, causing the girl to genuinely admire him. A green-haired elf falls to the floor in front of a girl in a luxurious dress, fulfilling her strict order, while sparrows on a branch watch what is happening in amazement, pondering the strange human customs. In the soft rays of sunlight, an elf and Daphne stand in the middle of the forest, surrounded by green foliage and the shade of the trees. An old map shows the Nsika mountain range, located on the border of the Grand Duchy and connected to the hills of another range. The hand touches the tree, feeling the dense energy of the elves, because it is here, in the Nsika Mountains, that the elves live together. The girl reflects with a slight weariness on the difficulties associated with elves and her dedication to the cause, while the elf smiles at her. She sits down at the roots of a huge tree, intending to train her mana, and the elf agrees to guard the perimeter. Teddy watches the dragon's mana training and muses that if anyone found out about this, they would definitely be considered crazy. Daphne, immersed in meditation, seems strange because the dragon uses a doll body and does not know about its curse or family. The elf reflects with bewilderment that she cannot understand what is going on in her head. Daphne scratches her ear in irritation, unable to concentrate and wondering if she even has a brain. The elf thinks sadly about how he ended up in the clutches of this mad dragon. The girl enthusiastically checks the collected mana and is unexpectedly pleased with the result. In the rays of the setting sun, the elf approaches the girl, and she decides that she has had enough training for today. The girl says with determination that she will have to come back here for training, and suddenly reacts to something unexpected. Cries for Teddy listens and notices that she hears human screams, and the girl confirms this. He assumes that people are arguing somewhere nearby and hurries the girl to leave before it gets noisier. The elf decides to go and save people, wondering why it needs to be done at all. The girl, with a determined look, clutches the amulet in her hand, feeling the burden of a great mission. In this world, everything is subject to the law of causality, where every action gives rise to consequences, like scales balancing existence. The golden dragon, representative of the gods, is capable of destroying an empire for fun, or destroying lives with its breath as soon as it wakes up. Cause and effect relationships change, justifying actions, and eventually even destruction can be called a good deed. All misunderstandings, accusations, and anger that arise from causality are interpreted as a catastrophe, and someone makes their choice against the backdrop of a battle. Amidst, Daphne assesses the situation with a cold gaze, counting her opponents and suspecting that she has been mistaken for the child of nobles. One of the bandits, hiding his face, approaches menacingly with a sword, offering to take the girl with him and sell her. Suddenly, a fierce battle begins as the knight rushes into battle with fury against the attackers. The knight, fighting with his last strength, urges the girl to run, promising to hold off the enemies. The bandit deals the fatal blow, and the knight falls, unable to protect the child. The remaining bandit, surveying the battlefield, orders the girl to be captured in order to finish what was started as quickly as possible. The wounded knight, with the last of his strength, tries to protect the child, but realizes the futility of his efforts and his imminent death. Daphne calmly opens the bottle of potion, while the bandit reaches out to her, not wanting to waste any more energy on resistance. She drinks the potion, and at that moment she realizes that it is precisely because of her pity for these people that she cannot leave them. The guildmaster, supported by his companion, recovers from the battle but feels uneasy. On the battlefield, a girl stands among the defeated enemies, and one of the survivors cannot believe his eyes. The guildmaster recalls that he was certain of his death due to the loss of the sacred stone, but suddenly a child appears and saves everyone, defeating the bandits. Daphne stands before her opponent with a serious face and a wooden sword in her hand, not intending to give in even in a child's training. She contemptuously reflects on how the bandits were ready to sell her alive or dead, and is surprised by their impudence, while the defeated enemy is ashamed of being defeated by a child. In a matter of seconds, all opponents were defeated on the ground, and even experienced fighters could not withstand her onslaught. Her behavior and skills are surprising, because she is no different from street thugs, despite her long hair and childish appearance. The girl is asked if she is Lady Daphne Actaeon, and she suspiciously asks who recognized her. Guildmaster Eggert, having introduced himself, bowed respectfully before her, calling her the jewel of the Grand Duke's family and expressing his honor to meet her. The guildmaster gratefully shakes the girl's hand, admitting that he remained alive only thanks to her, and she, surprised, does not understand the reason for such gratitude. The girl listens in bewilderment as they thank her for saving her, and does not immediately realize that it was she who became the reason for someone's salvation. The man, with joy and sincere gratitude, promises never to forget the mercy shown to him. Daphne sinks into silent thought, recalling the centuries she has lived. She reflects on the hundreds of years she lived under the name Celis and how she saved people from disasters. In her new body, she realizes that this is the second time she has been thanked for saving her. Daphne wonders if the world's reaction to her actions has changed because she is now in a human body. She comes to the conclusion that if she stays in this body, she will be able to live a normal life, and not a life full of disasters. The causality that had tormented her for hundreds of years suddenly seemed so light and insignificant. Tate gently brings her back to reality, reminding her that now is not the time for deep thinking. He noted Daphne realizes that it was like a magical drug and wonders about the consequences when it wears off. She suddenly feels a sharp pain and blood runs down her lips, leaving her surprised and confused. Panic erupts when those around her notice she is coughing up blood, and they urgently order her to be taken to a carriage for assistance. On the mountain path, they were attacked immediately, as if the enemies had been waiting for the right moment. One of the men suggests that the attackers knew about the Actaeon family's sacred artifact being transported through the Golden Grail Guild, and plans to interrogate the survivors to find out who was behind it. The scarred man ponders how the enemies learned of the shipment and set up an ambush when the guild leader had no further information, and wonders if it's worth interrogating the deputy leader. He decides to personally interrogate the suspect later and inquires if the guild leader has said anything else about the situation, receiving a reply about the advance being returned. It also becomes known that a bonus will be paid, a new group of mercenaries will be hired, and the treatment of the merchants will be reviewed after their condition has been verified. The question of Daphne's well-being comes up, which makes the man thoughtful. According to the guild leader, during the ambush, the young lady Daphne used a wooden sword to drive back the bandits, and the man still can't believe what he heard. He is tormented by the question of why she decided to save her enemies. He orders the prisoners to be interrogated and asks to be kept informed of further developments. The secretary agrees but asks where his master is heading. The man replies that he wants to know the whole truth. He has a disturbing dream about a burning city and the silhouette of a dragon against the backdrop of fire. She desperately tried to fetch water from a nearby lake to put out the fire, but the lake was too small for such a disaster. The idea of using ice magic flashed through my mind, but then the people caught in the fire would also suffer. A huge dragon in the midst of flames calls on people to leave their homes immediately. Through the fire and fear comes the promise that they have a chance to escape if they come outside. She screamed for a long time, even using amplification magic, but in the end, no one came out of hiding. People considered her a greater threat than the fire itself, which burned their homes and took their lives. The girl enters a semi-dark room, where light pours through the half-open door, and her gaze is directed downwards with a heavy feeling. Before her lie the bodies of those who died right at the exit, embracing each other, and the thought that one step could have saved them from a painful death haunts her. Looking around the empty house, she realizes that these people could have stayed alive. Clenching her fist, Daphne admits this only after some time, when the pain of loss becomes unbearable. An inner voice whispers to her that she is not capable of saving anyone, and this feeling of hopelessness weighs on her. At this moment, she is addressed with gratitude, and she sees the bright faces of people saved thanks to her kindness. She feels confused and unsure, not understanding what is happening and why everyone is so grateful. Daphne tries to figure out the situation, deciding that first she needs to figure out what to do with a certain guy named Tate. When she wakes up, she notices a man with a letter, and her mood is ruined from the very morning. She wonders why he came to her room and admits that she has been interested in this man for a long time. Daphne sits on her bed, frowning, and explains the change in her speech by saying that it is all thanks to the book she is deeply immersed in. The man, leafing through a notebook, says that he does not intend to talk for long and promises to leave if he gets answers to 2 questions. The girl notes with irony that her father didn't even inquire about her condition after she almost died, but immediately got down to business. A man with a cold expression wonders when their family became loving. He reminds her that she herself refused to acknowledge him as her father, so he treated her as a respected young man, but offers her to become his daughter again if she wants it. The girl irritably asks him not to call her by affectionate names, with difficulty containing her emotions, and the man calmly agrees. Daphne becomes mentally irritated with the man and decides that she needs to get rid of his presence as soon as possible, and in the meantime, he asks what she would like to know. The man asks if she knew about the transportation of the family's sacred artifact, and the girl is confused and does not understand what this object is. The man explains that the artifact is a gift from a dragon, passed down from generation to generation, and offers to show it, but the girl refuses with displeasure, considering it pointless. He moves on to the second question and asks why she saved the merchants, and the girl replies that she simply could not pass by when they were attacked by bad people. The man demands a more detailed explanation, warning that the ducal family will not leave her alone without a clear answer. Daphne irritably claims that she did this simply because the strong should help the weak, because it is their duty. The man thoughtfully repeats to himself her words about how helping others is natural. The girl's recent actions come to mind. She fired the maid for a minor mistake and threatened the cook with a knife because the food was cold. He doubts whether she has really changed since returning from the dead. Upon closer inspection, he doesn't notice anything unusual about her body, except for the curse that still exists. The girl wearily reminds him that she answered both questions and demands to be left alone, while the man wonders if she is still the same. The man warns her that if she is planning something evil again, she better stop, and the girl sarcastically thanks him for the advice. The girl calmly accepts the elegant box, without throwing a tantrum, as she had done before. She looks at the sacred artifact with bewilderment, opening it only out of curiosity. The man notes that she has saved what was meant for her and advises her to rest. The girl looks at the artifact thoughtfully, reflecting on how strange it is to call something that was simply given to her a gift. Her eyes reflect the thought of people who seem to her to be truly complex creatures. In the very center of the capital lies a popular cafe where city residents flock to enjoy the cozy atmosphere and exquisite desserts. However, something more is hidden beneath this building among the aristocracy. The basement is known as a secret gambling establishment where secret information is exchanged. In the semi-darkness behind heavy curtains, people gather, discussing the latest news and intrigues related to the Grand Duke's house. One of the interlocutors notes that even torture did not help to identify the culprits, astonishing their cruelty and resilience. The lady with the fan remarks that despite the plan's failure, the perpetrators attempted to steal the sacred artifact, and now the Duke must have a headache from worry. She adds thoughtfully that perhaps there is a story far more fascinating than the personalities of these bandits. In a luxurious hall, a woman with a fan mysteriously hints at victory over the robbers, while the man opposite listens warily to her words. The man remarks with a grin that the rumors have already spread, even though he ordered everyone to remain silent, and wonders how this became known. A mysterious guest in a cloak offers a rare 30-year-old drink, evoking gratitude and admiration from his interlocutor. A man with a glass in his hand says that they had no problems reaching the Acheon territory, and they walked along the mountain path without stopping, since the castle was right at the end of the road. The fan lady is amazed to hear about the Onhal mercenary corps and recalls that their skill is almost comparable to that of swordsmen. The man confirms that these mercenaries were entrusted with the secret escort of the prince, but notes that they were instantly defeated by a small group of opponents. At the round table, the players realize that the enemy turned out to be incredibly strong, and one of them admits that at that moment he thought about his death. At the decisive moment, something unexpected happens that changes the course of events. It turns out that a girl with a wooden sword defeats more than a dozen bandits in an instant, and those present admit that if they hadn't seen it for themselves, they would never have believed it, and her personality evokes genuine awe. The man confirms what he heard with a sly smile, his gaze full of hidden meaning. The girl with green eyes, dressed in a smart dress, turns out to be Daphne Acheon herself, who saved everyone present. At the table, the man admits that he thought the same, but doubts haunt him. He says that after the events ended, the girl fell, coughing up blood, and the elf doctor explained this by severe overexertion. The mysterious cloaked interlocutor is surprised that she went to save the caravan even though she was ill, and admits that the rumors about her changes were true. At the round table, the guests discuss whether they know anything else about her and why she has changed so much, but the details remain unknown. In the shadows of the corridor, a cloaked figure walks away, quietly repeating words of surprise and admiration to himself. A mysterious man with long dark hair appears in a blaze of light, his gaze fixed forward as the name of Lady Celis rings in the air. An excited maid runs into the room, holding a letter in her hands and hurrying to share the news with Lady Daphne. The girl lying on the bed feels the blood rushing to her head and asks to be helped up, and the maid rushes to her in panic. Despite the discomfort, recovery is faster than expected and sunlight fills the room. Daphne is confident that her quick recovery is not due to the medicine, but to the fact that she continues to practice mana breathing even while lying down. The maid runs into the room, holding an envelope with an invitation to the ball from the Finch house, and cannot hide her excitement. The maid delightedly begs him to open the invitation, and the girl wonders what could be so special about such a letter. The maid explains that this is the first invitation in 6 months, and the girl asks in surprise why it took so long. Memories take the heroine back to the past, where she overturned a tea table and ran away from Count Adele's party, leaving everyone confused. At that very party, the young Lord Adele even managed to break his nose, and the guests were shocked by what happened. Among the guests, a boy with a bandaged nose stands out, and the number of children hit by the young lady already exceeds 10. In a luxurious room, a girl in a lilac dress talks to a maid who brings tea and informs her that there is still no news from Tate. The heroine's thoughts are filled with memories of how she used to be able to earn in a day what took others years to achieve, and she wonders why a simple medicine takes so long to make. Daphne clenches her fist, wondering when she will become stronger and be able to take revenge, because progress seems so slow. She decides that she will train her mana outside today and asks the maid to get ready to go out. The girl regretfully notes that it would be easier to train in the forest, full of energy, but after Tate's departure she has to make do with what she has. On the ground she notices a sparkling mana man and is surprised by its appearance. She is overcome with confusion as to why such a valuable thing ended up here, and she carefully looks around. Her eyes light up with excitement, because if she absorbs this stone, her mana will increase significantly. Suddenly she finds another mana man and can't believe her luck. The girl rejoices, believing that her great luck has shown itself again, and hurries to pick up the find. The green-eyed girl happily notes that she has already found 3 Monocomen, clutching the find tightly in her hand. The girl's sudden appearance startles the green-haired girl, who gets hit in the face with a mana. The frightened girl falls to the ground, blaming the girl for luring her into a dark corner and complaining of pain. The girl, frowning, admits her guilt for her sudden appearance, but believes that attacking an innocent person was unnecessary. The girl with green hair justifies that she was the first to get scared and asks who is in front of her and why she is here. She sheepishly admits that she hasn't left her room for a long time and realizes that no one remembers her. A girl with green eyes is surprised when she is asked to remember someone, but does not recognize her interlocutor. The green-haired girl shyly tries to explain that she hasn't left her room for a long time and no one remembers her. The girl demands to speak more clearly, but her interlocutor is nervous and cannot find the words. The green-haired girl exclaims that she is Daphne's sister and reveals her identity. The green-haired girl introduces herself shyly, noticing that her name has been forgotten. Against the backdrop of the camp, 2 girls meet after a long separation, and one of them admits that she has difficulty communicating with people. A girl with green hair reflects on her dislike of society and dreams of remaining unnoticed in her room. The blonde explains that she called her interlocutor because she has a request. The green-haired girl excitedly asks to be introduced to the elf doctor. She is convinced in her heart that Daphne will certainly refuse her. The girl with green hair, having not slept all night, prepared many options to convince her interlocutor, but unexpectedly received consent. The blonde calmly declares that she is ready to help and introduce her to the doctor. The green-haired girl can hardly believe what is happening and reacts with confusion to the agreement. She is about to say something, but inside she is overtaken by difficult memories. Remembering the past, the girl feels the pain of ridicule because of the color of her hair, which was compared to dirty water and seaweed. The image of another girl who bullied her every day and demanded that she stay out of sight comes before her eyes. For her, causing pain was as natural as breathing, but her mother always said that her hair was beautiful, like a forest. Remembering the screams and reproaches, the girl hears the caring words of the maid, who is worried about her condition. Despite Daphne's cruelty, she could not refuse her and obediently left, clutching the pain in her hand. The girl, sitting alone in the room, dreams of staying here forever and is afraid of being expelled. She remembers the short but happy time spent with her mother. She ends up locking herself in her room, turning it into a personal fortress where no one can enter. 6 months passed, and the girl with green eyes spent a month developing a plan to meet the elf. She is surprised that her request was accepted so easily. The blonde calmly confirms that she will indeed help you get acquainted. The green-haired girl is scared, but admits that she really needs it, begging not to hit her. The blonde insists that she has no intention of hitting anyone. Not now, not ever, and if they don't believe her, there's nothing she can do. She adds that she no longer hits anyone without reason, and this will soon become obvious. The green-haired girl beams with joy, genuinely happy and grateful for the help. The blonde suspiciously asks why she needed the elf. The girl admits that the gnomes are better at this task, but still continues the conversation. The green-haired girl passionately explains that she doesn't trust dwarves and wants to learn the secrets of making potions. The blonde irritably recalls how the dwarves gave her herbs only in exchange for fulfilling their conditions, and now she suspects them of everything. The green-haired girl hopes to learn the truth from the elf, because, according to rumors, elves do not lie. She is amazed at her own talent, since even as a child she knows how to collect herbs and brew potions, and believes that she would not have been given anything counterfeit. In Daphne's imagination, the elf appears as the winner of the lying contest and a charlatan, regardless of whether he is telling the truth. The blonde agrees to fulfill the request, but puts forward one condition for getting to know each other. The green-haired girl asks about the mysterious condition with surprise. A blonde with glowing eyes demands to know everything about the hero and his weaknesses in order to finally deal with him. The girl with green hair remains shyly silent when asked to tell about herself. She tries to remain calm, although the excitement is still visible on her face. The servants are surprised to notice that the lady looks especially energetic today. The blonde rushes forward in panic, deciding that something important has happened. The flashback takes us back in time, where it becomes clear that all 3 adopted children were accepted only by Daphne's mother. After the death of their mother, the children gradually distanced themselves from the hero, plunging into loneliness. The hero left the estate approximately twice a month to attend to the affairs entrusted by the emperor to the knightly order. His most significant achievement was killing the Black Dragon, the Great Disaster. The true source of the tragedy turned out to be the emperor's desire. A painful question arises in the hero's soul: why did the emperor want him dead? The girl wonders if she could ever harm the empire, although she is not sure. She recalls that she did not cause much trouble and lived quite quietly. Indignation flares up within her because the emperor dared to attack someone who was trying to remain unnoticed. At this time, someone wonders who dares to order whom to kill and blames himself for what happened. The girl decides that after the hero, she will destroy the emperor, and along with him, his family. She rushes forward with enthusiasm, and the servants follow her with delight, admiring her determination. The girl lies on the sofa with a tired look, watching the mana stones lying on the table, and asks a question about the stones brought. The man explains that the number of mana stones arriving in the capital has decreased, and it has become especially difficult to find high-quality specimens. He feels uneasy, because the situation looks suspicious no matter how you look at it. After a sigh, he promises to bring twice as many stones next time. However, something else worries him more, and he decides to speak about it. The man is surprised that the lady might be worried about something, and at that moment she is considering whether to kill the elf standing in front of her. A girl with a serious expression on her face reminds the elf about the assassination attempt on her by an assassin named Daphne Akion. She recalls that 2 months have passed since she woke up in a new body, and since the news of her victory over the bandits spread, the killers realized that she was still alive. She is troubled by the coincidence between the emperor's order to the hero to kill the dragon and the black magician's attempt on the hero's daughter. The elf reasons that the black magicians consider Lady Celis a god, but an attempt to kill the current Lady Daphne seems incredible to him. The girl eagerly agrees that he may be right. She notes with irony that, having been a disaster in a past life, she has now become an enemy of black magicians, and the elf picks up on fashionable expressions with a smile. Tady, thrown to the floor, wonders what he did to deserve such treatment, and the girl looks at him with weariness. The girl resolutely demands that she be given access to the main building of the mansion. She thinks that if she goes there, the killers will definitely break in after her. Tidy agrees, noting that there are too many suffocating barriers in this place, and even he has never seen so much protection. He wonders what to do if even after catching the killer, they don't get any concrete information. The mysterious man in the cloak, confidently declares that he knows everything in the world, including the imminent fate of Lady Celis. The girl, with a serious look, tells the elf that she needs to find out the location of the great sage, and he wonders if it is him she is talking about. She asks him with a calm expression if he really has to carry out this task, and the elf is amazed at her calm in the face of a difficult task. The elf promises to try to gather information, but doubts whether he should do it personally. The girl asks with a slight smile not to worry about it. She happily announces that she has already found a student for him. Tady anxiously clarifies that the student is not human, but is instructed to teach the child how to prepare medicine. He exclaims his disagreement, clearly not wanting to take on such responsibility. The elf is outraged by the choice of an ordinary man, but agrees when he is promised release from work if the student succeeds. The girl notes that it is easy to negotiate with this elf, and he already dreams of making his new student the best alchemist among people. She is glad that the elf quickly gave up and tells him his name, instructing him to complete the task. At this time, the day of the ball at the Marquis of Finch arrives, and the anticipation of the holiday is in the air. The room is in a state of bustle, the maids are arguing over who will do the lady's hair, and the decorations are already ready for the ball. Daphne reflects on the shortage of people and looks for volunteers among the servants. She worries that her request will be rude, but the maid assures her that everything is fine. One of the maids, with a fanatical gleam in her eyes, declares that the young lady must be the most radiant at today's ball. The girl wearily thinks about the fact that this is her first outing in 6 months, while the maid combs her hair. In another room, a mother reminds a little girl named Bryce of an important lesson before the holiday. Little Bryce happily repeats that when meeting Daphne Akion, you should greet her and offer her dessert when she is in a good mood. The girl confidently declares that it is better to stay away from Daphne to avoid getting hurt, and her mother proudly praises her for her intelligence. The woman in the purple dress admits she's a little nervous, but doesn't want to miss the opportunity to hang out with friends. The newspapers are full of news of how the young lady Akion suppressed the bandits, and the nobles, gripped by gossip, watch each other, dreaming of catching a glimpse of the heroine of the rumors. The usual reason for a dinner party is for children to socialize, but half of the capital's offspring have already experienced Daphne's power. This is Bryce's first meeting with the young lady, and her arrival doubles the number of guests and courtiers at the ball. In the ballroom, the Marquise is asked about Lady Daphne's arrival time, and the ladies in luxurious dresses watch the conversation with interest. The Marquise explains with a smile that Daphne is a little late due to the great distance, but she will definitely appear since she herself expressed a desire to be present. One of the guests admits that she is so excited about the meeting that she even canceled another meeting for it, and both ladies laugh, sharing their anticipation. Someone notices with surprise that all the girls at the ball believe the rumors about Daphne. A man in a green tailcoat discusses the improbability of the rumor that a 5-year-old child defeated people that even mercenaries could not cope with. He asks. 2 girls in ball gowns exchange glances, one of them nervously hiding her face behind a fan, discussing rumors. One of the ladies recalls hearing about Daphne Akion's physical weakness, and her gaze becomes thoughtful. The guests at the ball discuss how Daphne suffered from an incurable disease, so they allowed her a lot and tolerated her behavior. The young man in the green tailcoat agrees that this version seems more logical, since it is hard to believe that a sick child could defeat the bandits. The crowd wonders if the newly created Grand Ducal family was using the young lady to gain influence. The young man with green eyes wonders if there is really no way to prove the truth about what is happening. The woman in the purple dress remarks demurely that there is no way to verify whether the incident with Daphne was true. A young man in a green suit offers to test Daphne's skills in practice, which surprises his interlocutor. The woman turns around when her name is suddenly called. Lady Akion enters the hall solemnly, attracting all eyes. The guests are shocked by her sickly appearance and begin to doubt the rumors about her strength. Despite this, there is a feeling in the air that not everything is so simple. One of the girls dreams of talking to Daphne, despite all the rumors, and Daphne herself is perplexed why everyone present is looking at her so intently. Daphne, in the luxurious hall, is surprised that balls are held this way and feels that everything is much more complicated. She stands alone in the spotlight, feeling lonely among the many guests. The girl notices that other children are discussing something together, and she herself came to the ball to meet and communicate with her peers, but she feels like an outsider. She understands that she cannot leave the ball empty-handed and decisively takes a step forward. Hesitant about whether she should approach the others first, she nevertheless decides to approach the group of children. With a forced smile and a tense expression, she asks the question, trying to look friendly. The golden-haired girl is confused when she notices that her interlocutors look frightened and do not answer her, and the atmosphere becomes tense. The 3 girls, confused, ask her not to be angry and try to stop her so she can explain herself. One of the girls, smiling shyly, introduces herself and states her name. The girls make excuses that they are nervous and ask for forgiveness, but the tension in the air can be felt even visually. Daphne watches in amazement as the others beg for a chance and ask for forgiveness. One of the pink-haired girls smiles and wonders if everyone is so afraid of her that they are ready to fall over in fear. Bryce smiles and hugs her friend, who listens shyly to compliments about her importance. In front of the blonde with a flower in her hair smiles reservedly, noting the young people's good manners and expressing her approval, and Bryce thanks her. Compared to expectations, the atmosphere turns out to be quite friendly, and Lady Daphne happily accepts the treat from her new acquaintance. The young man with a stern expression pushes the pink-haired girl away, demanding that she not interfere and get out of the way. In the center of the hall, a fair-haired girl sits on a throne, and a tall man appears in front of her, attracting attention. The boy, with a smug smile, recalls how the pink-haired heroine broke his nose, and now he wants revenge. The fair-haired girl, thoughtfully eating a sweet, is surprised at who is in front of her and assumes that it is one of Daphne's victims. Her gaze becomes serious, because now there is something more important for her. The guy grabs his sword with determination in his eyes, offering to spar. He smirks and claims that sword fighting will be fairer than clumsy punches. Arius, looking down at Daphne, sarcastically hints that she knows nothing about honor. A wooden sword falls at the feet of a girl in a white dress. A new figure appears in the hall, watching what is happening from the balcony. Duke Brown, with a reserved assessment of the situation, notes someone's good work. An inner voice reasons that if Daphne's pride is slightly hurt, she will definitely accept the challenge, because her character will not allow otherwise. A scene comes to mind where a guy with a victor's crown stands over a defeated girl, waiting for her true skills to emerge sooner or later. Rumors begin to grow, turning into a huge scandal that engulfs high society. These rumors become a noose that tightens around the necks of their victims. Duke Brown, with a sly smile, anticipates how new difficulties will complicate the life of Duke Akion. The guy with the sword in his hand suggests that Daphne apologize, otherwise he will teach her a lesson. Arius reacts with irritation to her calmness, considering the girl stupid and short-sighted. Daphne calmly reflects that she is being trained by knights, and is confident that such an opponent will not be able to defeat her. The boy demands that she pick up her sword and prepare for battle, intending to show her strength. The girl calmly states that she does not need a sword to deal with him and invites him to attack. Arius rushes into the attack with a scream, and Daphne remains standing in place, showing no fear. A slight movement of Daphne's dress flashed through the air, foreshadowing a swift attack. The white-haired girl, gathering all her determination, confidently blocks Arius's attack. The guy, amazed and afraid, realizes that his opponent turned out to be stronger than he expected. A confident and daring smile appears in Daphne's eyes, foreshadowing her victory. She easily gains the upper hand, forcing Arius to retreat under the onslaught of her unexpected strength. Daphne looks at Arius with a slight smile, who is confused by his defeat. The guy ends up defeated on the floor, and the girl calmly watches him from above. Arius can't believe what happened lying on the marble floor. Daphne, with a cold look, notes that nothing impossible happened because he didn't even apologize for his actions. One of the ladies in the audience is surprised that Daphne defeated Mark with just one move. The man is amazed and cannot believe his eyes as he watches what is happening. A girl with white hair approaches Bryce and asks if she is in pain. Bryce looks at Daphne in surprise, not immediately understanding the question. Bryce thanks her for her concern and assures her that she is okay, taking the outstretched hand. A warm feeling appears in Bryce's heart as she realizes that Daphne fought for her. Despite the rumors, Daphne seems gentle and kind, asking Bryce to bring her tea and cookies after so much worry. She understands that after recent events, everyone will come running to her like vultures and decides to leave for a while. A fresh breeze greets her outside, bringing relief. On the balcony, Daphne takes a deep breath, feeling the fresh air make her feel better. She dreams of her body becoming stronger, noting that the situation is gradually improving, although not as quickly as she would like. Daphne, standing on the balcony, notices the approach of a mysterious man with long black hair. The man greets the girl with a gentle smile, reminding her of an old meeting and asking her an unusual question. Daphne flares up with indignation, accusing the guest of deception and rejoicing at the opportunity to say everything to his face. He thanks her with a touch of irony for such a warm welcome, not hiding his flattery. It turns out that in front of her is only a projection. But even this does not stop Daphne from preparing for the blow. The girl with green eyes demands an explanation, suspecting that the man knew in advance about her appearance in this body. The man with long black hair explains that he cannot tell his story at length, citing a lack of time, which makes Daphne indignant. He admits that he was thrown to the other end of the continent, and maintaining a projection at such a distance is extremely difficult, and the girl guesses who is behind this. Daphne feels trapped, surrounded by dark chains and darkness. The man says with a smile that he won't reveal all the secrets at once, because then it won't be as interesting, and the girl clenches her fist in anger. A man with scarlet eyes warns a girl with white hair about the imminent appearance of dark mages, and her bright green eyes reflect anxiety. Inside, at this time, an ominous silhouette of a magician appears in the darkness, surrounded by a purple glow and a skull. The girl reflects on the fact that the curse on her body is quite persistent, and most of the enemies are only insignificant weaklings, so she sees no reason to fear them. The green-haired man calmly closes his eyes, as if trusting her resolve. A man with long hair reminds a girl that even a cornered cat can bite a lion, and she is confused and tries to understand his words. Daphne indignantly demands an answer, while the guy with green hair slowly says goodbye and disappears, ignoring her screams. The white-haired girl desperately calls out to the sage, but he has already disappeared into the portal, leaving her alone. She clenches her fist, holding back her anger, and a mocking laugh is heard in the darkness. She swears that as soon as she returns, she will order Tati to prepare a means to capture the great sage, and at that moment something unexpected happens, causing the girl to shudder. Daphne feels a strange tremor that permeates everything around her with alarm. The girl with white hair suddenly realizes that something dangerous is happening. An ominous energy of death appears in the corridor, slowly filling the space near the doors. The warning about black magicians comes to mind, and fear grips her thoughts. A sudden explosion shakes the building, and panic grips everyone present. People run outside in a hurry, escaping from the collapsing building. The woman in the purple dress panics when she remembers the children and insists that they need to be saved first. Chaos erupts in the crowd, and the man, overcome with fear, roughly pushes her away, trying to get out. One of the guests grabs the frightened servant by the collar, demanding help. The man insists on being taken outside immediately, and the servant tries to calm him down and asks him to follow everyone else. In a panic, the guest looks for a secret exit, but suddenly gets hit on the head by a fragment. The stunned man clutches his head, not understanding what just happened. In a room filled with panic, Daphne and the other children find themselves in the spotlight as the adults debate salvation. The white-haired girl looks at the man with disapproval, reminding him of the importance of saving the children, and he embarrassedly realizes his mistake. The woman in the purple dress speaks to Daphne, getting her attention. She asks to take the little girl first, advising to move carefully, as the building will not completely collapse yet. The woman looks forward with determination, preparing for action. Daphne and the grown lady rush to get the child out of the dangerous building. Daphne supports the crying girl, thinking that the source of death energy must be somewhere nearby, and decides to act quickly. The fire begins to spread under the table, threatening the entire room. A girl with white hair helps a child to get up, despite her fear and tears. Daphne becomes alert when she detects a suspicious smell that indicates approaching danger. Flames engulf the building, turning everything around into a raging fire. Daphne, despite the pain, tries to remain calm while a frightened girl coughs next to her. She holds out a handkerchief to protect the child's breath from the smoke. Memories take her to other children who once simply went out for some fresh air, and the thought that they might die here seems unfair to her. Clenching her fist, the girl decides that she will not let these children die. She rushes to the others, convinced that the weak must be protected despite the fire raging around them. A man in a tuxedo, standing in the middle of a fire, gives the order to take the child out into the fresh air, and his words are met with quick agreement. Daphne, standing surrounded by flames, firmly decides that she will not allow anyone to get hurt. The girl notices that most people have already left the dangerous place and hears her name being called. The man is relieved to hear that she is safe and asks her to come outside because a rescue team is already on the way. He holds out his hand, urging Daphne to follow him as quickly as possible. The girl recalls that this man had already helped the wounded and saved children, which inspires confidence in her. A man in a tuxedo is surprised to learn that he is late and does not immediately understand what is happening. With the fire raging, Daphne insists that he leave while she goes to check the building further. The guy notices that the girl is also wounded and is surprised by her persistence. He wonders why such a selfless girl was once called trash, because she always puts others before herself. Inside himself, he decides that he will definitely tell everyone about her heroic act, so that as many people as possible will know about it. But before he leaves, he carefully picks up Daphne to carry her out of danger. The rescuers announce that there is no one left inside and call for everyone to leave, but the girl insists that she is fine. Daphne indignantly declares that she has not yet finished the examination, despite attempts to carry her away. The girl breaks free and runs back into the burning building, leaving the man confused. She runs through the flames, and behind her she hears screams calling her to come back. At this time, a knight in shining armor fights an invisible enemy using powerful magic. He is surprised by the number of opponents, assessing the situation at the entrance to the forest. The knight and the officer discuss how everyone was in a panic due to the appearance of unknown monsters that no one had ever encountered before. Among the defeated creatures, they notice that the monsters look unusual and cause alarm. The officer explains that the strangeness of these creatures is due to the fact that they are chimeras, created by forcibly combining different monsters. They conclude that these creatures escaped from some laboratory and that their creators acted without permission and now risk being executed. The knight notes that the people who create such monsters do not value their own lives, and although there is no consistency in the creatures, they are made very skillfully. An inner voice tells me that only black magicians are capable of such things, because they are the ones behind the creation of these monsters. The officer is puzzled as to why the monsters are so persistent and active, and the knight notes that this is only the beginning, but does not wish to participate in this any further. The knight suggests leaving the fight against the monsters to the capital's defenders, admitting that he is tired of dealing with black magicians. The officer understands that they will now have to deal with the situation on their own. In his mind, he notes that after losing his wife to the black magicians and with the young lady's current state, no one despises them more than this knight, although he seems cold on the outside. The officer feels like a worthless adjutant, but still agrees with the order. Gathering his strength, he calls on everyone to move on, because the monsters are already finished. The knight and adjutant sense a strange vibration, realizing that it is the energy of death, and try to figure out what is happening. The man in armor realizes that the black magicians are acting much faster than he expected. The officer admits that he was frightened by the persistence of the monsters and wonders whether they should simply leave, since their task was only to destroy the monsters and not to fight black magic. A column of smoke rises in the distance, and they notice that it is happening at the estate of the Marquis of Finch, where the knights are supposed to be. The knight reports that Daphne was there today, and the adjutant wonders how he knows this. Without waiting for an explanation, the knight resolutely heads towards danger, despite attempts to stop him. Daphne runs down the corridor, surrounded by tongues of flame and clouds of smoke. In the fiery chaos, someone is desperately searching for her among the destruction. Panic sets in as it becomes clear that finding a girlfriend in this hell is not easy. The smoke clouds her consciousness, and Daphne realizes that the previous route to the exit is now cut off. She urgently needs to find another way out. Suddenly, her gaze catches on something important in the middle of the fire. She notices Bryce, who turns out to be alive and in need of help. Bryce, frightened, asks Daphne why she is still there instead of evacuating, and is surprised by her appearance. Daphne explains that she has come to save her friend and calls on her to rise so that they can find a way out of the fire together. Bryce admits that she can't move because her leg is trapped in the debris. Daphne calms the girl down and suggests that she try to free her leg on the count of 3, promising to help lift the stone. Focusing, Daphne begins the countdown, preparing to give it her all. Bryce struggles to pull her leg free as Daphne helps her move the heavy debris. Bryce tries to stand up carefully, and Daphne anxiously asks if she can walk. The girl notices scratches on her hands and realizes that she was injured while picking up the debris. Bryce assures her that she is fine, asks her not to worry, and advises Daphne to take better care of her leg, even though the wounds look painful. Daphne reminds them that getting out of the fire is more important now and asks if anyone else was there besides Bryce. Bryce explains that she helped other children evacuate immediately after the explosion, but she stayed behind when she was pinned under the debris. Daphne smiles with relief, realizing that her friend did the right thing and saved the others. Bryce is surprised and grateful to hear that she did very well and takes the outstretched hand. The girls hold on to each other, ready to search for a way to salvation together. Daphne understands that she urgently needs to find a way out, but suddenly feels something alarming. A strong death energy begins to build around them, and Bryce asks worriedly what is happening. Daphne notices something suspicious under the table and approaches cautiously. Lifting the tablecloth, she discovers a mysterious black box emitting a dangerous glow. Bryce anxiously asks if Daphne managed to find anything amid the fire and chaos. Daphne notices a suspicious black box under the table and carefully picks it up. She realizes that she is holding a magical bomb in her hands, filled with sinister energy. The girl realizes that it is impossible to defuse such a thing, and she thinks hard about her next steps. A look of determination appears in her eyes, because the lives of many people are at stake. Meanwhile, outside, the guests are panicking and discussing what is happening, unaware that the explosion of this bomb could destroy the entire Marquise's estate. Daphne stands in the middle of the fire, realizing that if the magic bomb explodes, all the people she saved will be in danger, and she urgently needs to do something. Bryce looks at the burning ruins in panic, while the white-haired girl thinks hard about the situation. Daphne, despite her fear, gathers all her determination, not allowing herself to think about death. The girls find themselves in a comical state of confusion, not knowing what to do next. At this time, the essence of black magic is revealed, feeding on the energy of death and disaster, which makes it almost identical to destructive force. For Daphne, this magical bomb becomes a source of power, as she can absorb energy, even if she cannot quickly become stronger in her new body. Daphne firmly states that she is going to detonate the dangerous object, warning Bryce to stay away, and the pink-haired girl is shocked by what she hears. When the bomb detonates, the shockwave clears a path, and Daphne points out to Bryce that she can escape through the resulting passage. The white-haired girl is determined to stop the disaster and asks for her magical power to be increased while she does so. Bryce is confused, but Daphne insists that she save herself without wasting time on explanations. Bryce runs away in alarm, while Daphne remains in the fire despite the danger. Bryce is amazed at how easily Daphne is willing to sacrifice herself, as if it were the most ordinary thing for her. Bryce remembers how the white-haired girl stood up for her and rushed into danger without hesitation. The moment when Daphne extended a helping hand comes to mind, and it becomes clear that her action was not an accident. Bryce cannot bear the thought of Daphne's death and calls out to her in desperation in the midst of the fire. An ominous energy fills the space, heralding the beginning of a dangerous ritual. Surrounded by streams of magic, Daphne prepares to use her power to counter the disaster. At that moment, a powerful explosion is heard, engulfing everything around. People outside are alarmed when they notice a new explosion that has occurred inside the building. Daphne, the white-haired girl, fights with powerful force, her gaze full of determination and tension. She realizes that the energy is too strong and spreading faster than she can absorb it. Daphne realizes that without the potion, Teddy wouldn't be able to even try to control this power, but her body is already at its limit. The girl understands that if she acts rashly, everyone around her will die, and she cannot allow this. She no longer considers herself a great disaster, because now she can show real goodwill. People have appeared in her life who sincerely rejoice in her presence and support her. She is no longer the same person who was previously powerless and could not save anyone. Now the girl realizes that only she can save everyone. Gathering all her power, she channels magic to absorb the destructive energy. Daphne struggles to contain the pain as blood runs down her lips. The girl feels that the potion's effect is wearing off, but she continues to fight the magic with her last strength. At that moment, a knight quickly approaches her, ready to intervene. Their eyes meet, filled with determination and understanding of what is happening. The light of purification envelops Daphne, and she feels her soul becoming pure. The girl takes a tentative step forward, returning to life after the ordeal. A gauntleted hand reaches out to Daphne, stopping her. The knight carefully hugs the girl, making it clear that she can now relax. The man with blue eyes looks at Daphne with approval, acknowledging her efforts. The girl breathes heavily, wounded and tired after the ordeal. She carefully touches the knight's hand, seeking support. His gaze reflects deep compassion and care. Daphne smiles through her fatigue and pain, feeling relief and warmth. The girl understands that the knight really came to her aid and feels safe in his arms. Bryce runs happily towards her mother, overwhelmed with emotion. The mother hugs her daughter tightly, happy that Bryce is safe and sound. The woman tearfully thanks fate for saving her daughter, admitting how much she feared for her. Bryce confirms his mother's words, holding her hand tightly. The girl explains that Daphne saved her by covering the magic bomb with her body and telling her to run. Those present discuss that the explosion was caused not by an ordinary bomb, but by a magic bomb. One of the men thoughtfully recalls that he had met Daphne before. The man speaks with alarm about the fact that the energy of death was the cause of everything. He recalls that it was a black magic bomb filled with destructive power. The woman panics and realizes that Daphne could have been harmed by this energy. The night Daphne is unconscious, with a wound on her head, in the arms of a knight. The doctor confirms that the girl is alive, and everyone feels relieved. The knight carries Daphne in his arms, and the doctor warns that without immediate help she may die. One of the servants anxiously asks if the girl is really in danger. People in the crowd discuss how only holy power can resist black magic and are amazed at Daphne's dedication. The doctor urges everyone to remain calm, promising to call a priest to the mansion and returns with the girl. The knight notices that the doctor has doubts and asks what the problem is. The man in armor insists that he cannot leave without resolving the situation, especially when the life of a young lady is at stake. The knight understands that Daphne's actions are obvious to everyone who witnessed the events. The doctor clarifies that the girl absorbed all the energy from the magic bomb, and the knight confirms this. People are talking about Daphne sacrificing herself to save everyone, calling her a hero. The man with blue eyes thoughtfully repeats the word hero to himself. The knight urges not to waste time and to move on as quickly as possible to help the girl. The crowd sees Daphne off, promising to never forget her feat and calling her their hero. Daphne lies unconscious in the arms of her savior, and those around her decide to celebrate her feat. The silence of the night envelops the forest, where the stars twinkle above the trees. In the darkness, someone steps carefully along the branches, hiding in the shadows. The black glove tightens, and an ominous whisper is heard nearby. A group of people in black cloaks gathers in the thicket, their faces hidden under hoods. One of them, with burning eyes, asks angrily about the failure of their mission. In a desperate attempt to stop the very flow of life, an ancient dragon was summoned. During the hero Archeon's crusade, most of them were destroyed, but not all perished. The survivors hid for many years, sharpening their blades for revenge. Now, after some time, they rise again from the shadows, ready for new actions. The leader angrily reproaches his followers for failing at such a simple task. There is anger and frustration in his voice as he clenches his teeth in anger. The black-cloaked leader looks at his followers with disdain, surprised that they are still alive. One of the subordinates explains in despair that he returned not out of fear of death, but to report important news. The servants fall to their knees, begging to be heard and asking for mercy. The leader threatens reprisals if he hears anything objectionable and demands an explanation. One of the servants calls out Daphne Archeon's name, attracting the attention of everyone present. The leader remembers that she is the daughter of the very hero who was cursed by their former leader. The cult leader is surprised that the girl was able to absorb the bomb's energy, since according to his orders, she should have been dead. Her body now contains a combination of the former leader's curse and a massive amount of death energy. He recalls that he gave the order to eliminate Daphne before the curse was activated in order to obtain the energy of death. The leader suspects that he was lied to in the mission completion report. Now he is angered by the thought that the hero's daughter is still standing in their way, interfering with their plans. The cult leader declares that anyone who stands in the way of their plans deserves death, and his subordinates promise to carry out the order immediately. Before this, he makes a mysterious gesture with his hand, preparing for something terrible. One of the followers suddenly begins to choke, overcome with horror. His body convulses in agony as the dark magic consumes him from the inside. A scream echoes through the forest, and the others watch in stupefaction. Against the backdrop of this horror, a step is heard, foreshadowing new events. A mysterious enemy lurks in the shadows of the forest, his gaze full of malice and determination. At this time, a man with golden hair is calmly reading a newspaper in a luxurious living room. Newspaper headlines discuss the measures taken after the terrorist attack by black magicians in the capital. The man notes that with the return of black magicians, publishing houses are gripped by panic, but the problem is much deeper. He is surprised that he did not receive an immediate summons from the emperor, while Daphne is resting under supervision. Daphne, who saved everyone during the attack, has still not regained consciousness, and this is causing concern. 3 days have passed since the tragedy, and the wait is becoming increasingly difficult. He reports that Daphne has not opened her eyes for 3 days, turning to the man with green hair. Teddy assures her that it is just fatigue and that the girl will wake up soon, although she does not reveal the whole truth about her condition. He decides to say that he gave Daphne a potion to restore her health, but asks to be informed if her condition worsens. The man with a cold expression says that if Daphne dies, they should at least prepare a funeral. Teddy is confused and surprised by such insensitivity, wondering what is wrong with this man. The man watches what is happening thoughtfully, showing no emotion. He stands by Daphne's bed, lost in his thoughts, while she lies silently under the covers. At this time, articles praising the girl's feat continue to be published in the city. In the room, a maid wearily carries the gifts that the Marquis Fincy's family sends every day in the hope of a speedy recovery. A young man with a cold gaze stands in the shadows, pondering the feelings of ordinary people. He watches the white-haired girl lying in bed, remembering how he was cursed with an emotion-erasing curse 5 years ago, and thinks that if it weren't for that, he would be worried about her too. Even when the last vestiges of the girl's life fade away, the guy notices that he doesn't feel anything, and this seems strange to him. He looks at himself in the darkness, realizing his cruelty. His hand touches his face, and in the silence, a question arises about the meaning of her presence next to him. Daphne, kneeling before a grown man, accuses him of having to kill her to save her mother. The white-haired girl clenches her fists and sobs, believing that her death would be of no concern to him. A man with a cold gaze cannot find the words to respond to a child's tantrum. His hand reaches for the sword, but inside he feels no emotion. Daphne, trembling with despair, raises her sword, but in the man's soul neither sadness nor anger nor guilt is born. In the end, the boy realizes that this fragile sword could not harm him. Daphne wakes up screaming from a nightmare, and the man recoils in fear. The girl, still not fully awake, complains of an unpleasant dream, and the boy watches her in confusion. She looks at the man with irritation, realizing that he is the first person she sees after waking up. The guy with a gloomy expression on his face realizes that reality is even worse than the dream. The girl decides to cover herself with a blanket again and asks to be woken up only after he leaves. The man reacts with surprise to her unexpected behavior. Daphne, lying under the blanket, looks with displeasure at the man who appeared in her room in the morning. The girl is irritated because of the spoiled mood, and the guy does not understand what happened. The man smiles unexpectedly, surprised by his own emotions. Daphne angrily demands that the guy leave her room immediately, and he cannot believe what is happening. Driving the hero away seems like the right decision to her, but her body's weakness makes itself felt. The girl realizes with annoyance that she has dropped an important object and becomes upset about her clumsiness. She is happy that she will be able to find black magicians faster and take away their power. The girl, unable to move, decides to increase her mana, despite the unpleasant taste, and reflects on her life with irony. A maid looks into the room to see if the young lady is awake. Appetizing sandwiches appear on the tray, and Daphne happily notices the treat. The maid asks about Daphne's well-being, and the girl replies that she feels much better. However, the girl notices that Daphne looks paler and has probably lost the weight she gained with difficulty. Daphne happily accepts the food, but the maid worries, remembering how dangerous everything was. The maid advises the young lady to think first of herself, and not just of others. Letters from people Daphne saved appear on the table, reminding her of her good deeds. The girl and the maid agree that caring for others is important, but they shouldn't forget about themselves. She sincerely praises Daphne for her efforts, lighting up the room with a warm smile. The girl watches this bright moment with surprise and slight embarrassment. Daphne sees Anna smile so widely for the first time and thinks about it. The idea that someone will care and worry about her seems strange and new to her. The girl feels a strange but pleasant feeling, pressing her hand to her chest. Daphne asks Anna to give her the letters, and the maid turns around in surprise. The girl picks up letters filled with gratitude and warm words from the rescued people. A soft smile appears on Daphne's face as she feels the kindness returning. Among the many envelopes, she wonders if this is the joy of seeing goodness come back. An image of herself, once alone and lost in the darkness, emerges in her memory. Now, reading the letters, the girl feels that this joy is enough to overshadow past grievances and pain. One of them, Anna, agrees, noting that the room has already been warmed up well, and hands the girl a glass of milk. The girl explains with a sly smile that she is expecting a guest to visit soon. In the darkness under the bed, an ominous shadow begins to slowly creep. In the silence of the night, Daphne sleeps peacefully, unaware of the impending danger, while a dark shadow creeps across the floor towards the bed. A man in a black cloak appears in the room, his figure shrouded in ominous magic. He is surprised to find that the girl is still alive, although he was sure of her death. The man decides that this time he must finish what he started, since the hero is not in the palace today. At this time, Tati, dressed in armor, stands guard at the majestic gates. Daphne, as if in another world, finds herself alone in a cold and empty space. A black and purple flame erupts above Daphne's bed as the stranger prepares a spell. Suddenly, a strange light illuminates her face, as if something changes in the air. The black-robed mage suddenly recoils, overcome by his own magic. A look of the dark energy surges out of control, and a contemptuous voice echoes through the room, pointing out his mistake. Daphne, surrounded by a magical aura, decides to teach the uninvited guest a lesson. The man in black is shocked, because before this the girl seemed like an ordinary child, and now he doubts whether she was hiding her abilities. She watches his panic calmly, noting how quickly he tries to analyze the situation. The mage falls to his knees, unable to cope with her power, but still tries to gather information. With despair and anger, he asks who she really is. Daphne mockingly replies that it is no longer important for a dead man to know her name, because he will not be able to tell anyone about her. The man desperately tries to hold back the growing darkness, cursing Daphne. He releases a powerful stream of black magic, hoping to divide and destroy his opponent. The mage casts an instant death spell, confident that no one will be able to block it. However, his magic only barely touches the target, causing only a slight tickling sensation. Daphne looks at the enemy with mockery, considering his attempts pathetic and useless. The man is shocked to realize that his spell has been completely broken. He realizes that he is facing an opponent he cannot defeat, and decides that he must inform the leader. The girl notes with regret that people still do not value their lives. She reaches out to take back what was taken away using her power. The masked man is horrified to realize that the energy of death has returned to him and considers it impossible. Daphne looks coldly at the enemy for her. Death becomes a natural outcome. An inner voice reminds her of her true nature as a great dragon and an evil disaster. The girl grabs her opponent by the clothes, asserting her right to his life. Her gaze fills with fury and power when she reveals her true might. For the sake of their goal, the enemies are going to kill the hero, stopping at nothing. Their plan is to overthrow the dragon and take possession of his god fragment. All this is done for the sake of power over the world, which they so strive for. Daphne reflects that ordinary people try to do what even the gods failed to do, not knowing their place. The reason for the assassination attempt on Daphne is the fear that after her death, the curse will awaken the memories of the ghosts. Attempts to kill the girl to restore her strength mean that the ghosts have not yet reached full power, and she has little time. As long as she lives in this body, it is impossible to avoid persecution, because in her current state, she cannot cope with a sudden attack. The only way to survive is to become stronger. Daphne is confident that she can destroy the heroes, the emperor and the ghosts, and break the curse. At that moment, Tati bursts into the room, attracting attention with her noisy appearance. In the center of the room lies the body of the enemy, and his soul floats nearby, finding no peace. Teddy is surprised to notice that the body looks like all the blood has been sucked out of it. He jokes about vampires but admits that Daphne did a brilliant job. The girl carefully examines the remains of black magic, realizing that it was the killer who attempted to take her life. Silence falls in the room, and thoughts return to what has been discovered. Daphne notes with irony that people continue to dream of the impossible no matter what. Teddy ponders someone's ambitions with a slight smirk as she stands in the richly decorated room. Daphne, with her head down and her arms wrapped around herself, remembers the people who killed the white dragon and feels anxious about the future. The white-haired girl frowns as she discusses the need for caution with the man, while the green-haired boy looks a little embarrassed. Daphne asserts her power with confidence, reminding herself and those around her that she doesn't need to be careful. The girl sits down on the bed resolutely, promising not to leave unpunished those who dared to touch her, and Teddy watches her. A guy with green hair is instructed to deal with someone while standing next to a person lying on the floor. Teddy ponders her duties, imagining herself as a nature elf and then a death elf, but receives a simple order to get rid of the enemy. Daphne sits on the bed and explains that she erased the prisoner's memories, so she considers the situation normal. The guy suddenly remembers something important. His gaze becomes focused. Teddy announces that she is going to check on the appearance of the great sage in the western desert, and Daphne, covered with a blanket, wearily agrees. With a slight smile, Teddy reminds Daphne of the distance of the western desert and emphasizes that she is not going there for pleasure. Daphne irritably ponders the loyalty of her servant, and the green-haired guy hurries out of the room to avoid being caught in the crossfire. Teddy breathes a sigh of relief as she steps across the cold floor. A man with short blonde hair appears in the training yard, wondering how long it has been since he was here at this time. He recalls beginning to train with the knights at dawn, noting that Archeon's knights were never particularly renowned. The memory brings to mind the image of a knightly order of the ducal house, which was not even awarded an official title. In the darkness, doubts are heard about the significance of the Knights of Heroes because everyone is hoping for a hero. Without a hero, the knights seem like a useless group, and many of them joined only for glory. The remaining knights lose motivation because no one pays attention to them. Training becomes a formality, just to fill the gap. A young lady appears, her frail body confirming that she nearly died. The girl clenches her fist and, despite her weakness, runs forward across the yard. Even when Daphne was losing consciousness from fatigue, she continued to run forward. A man with short blonde hair recalls how the girl passionately declared her desire to take the Duke's place. He is amazed at her strength because she was able to prevent the attack of black magicians and save people, despite her fragile body. Thanks to the young lady, the knight's morale has risen, and the boy decides to train even harder to impress her. A man notices someone in the training yard and is surprised. Arius, a boy with red hair, approaches him and asks why he came here. Arius, clutching his wooden sword, notes that his master also came to training early because he could not sleep. The red-haired boy explains that he decided to take a walk to the training ground since he woke up so early, and the man watches him. Arius looks away thoughtfully, his face becoming serious. The man notices the change in the boy's expression and quietly addresses him. Arius asks in surprise if his interlocutor feels offended. The man is taken aback by the question, and the red-haired boy reacts with embarrassment to his surprise. The man reminds Arius of Daphne's recent feat and asks if he feels offended. The red-haired boy is embarrassed, his cheeks flushing. Arius begins to justify himself, assuring that he simply considers Daphne the best and does not envy her. He insists he's never been jealous, but admits he might be a little jealous. Arius confidently says that envy helps him become better, and his gaze becomes serious and inspiring. The man gratefully places his hands on the boy's shoulders, noting that all the effort spent on training was not in vain. The man places his hand on Arius's shoulder, asking if he considers himself insignificant, and the boy looks down in embarrassment. The red-haired guy, after a short pause, quietly replies that he doesn't consider himself a nobody. The man drops to one knee and pats the boy on the shoulder approvingly, saying that this is enough. Arius clenches his fist, full of determination. The boy's imagination is filled with the image of a proud knight, and he promises to follow in his father's footsteps. The man offers to begin the training with a kind smile, preparing to take the blows of Arius's sword. Arius runs excitedly across the yard, and a man with white hair follows him, getting ready for training. Sunlight illuminates the majestic building near which the events unfold. Daphne, wrapped in a cloak, appears at the entrance and calls for Moya. The man notices the girl with surprise and turns towards her. He hurries to Daphne, surprised by her appearance outside of bed, and she explains that she came to ask a question. Daphne and the man notice knights lying on the ground in the arena, causing the girl to become confused. The man explains to Daphne that, having seen her desperate struggle, the knights could not remain on the sidelines and will now train harder, but the girl does not see the connection. He reports that Arius has joined them and is now also trying his best. Daphne notices Arius, who is barely able to stand on his feet, looking completely exhausted after training. Despite being tired, the red-haired boy completes all the exercises, showing perseverance and willpower. The man confidently says that at this rate, Arius will become a sword master in a few years, and promises that they can count on him. He smiles and wonders why Daphne is telling him about this, since usually everyone praises the hero. Daphne says with displeasure that she doesn't like to hear praise, because it won't bring joy to Arius anyway, and the man justifies himself by saying that he just wanted to tell her the news. The girl remembers what she wanted to ask and admits that she forgot about it for a moment. Daphne suddenly asks where black magicians can be found, causing surprise in her interlocutor. The man becomes wary, fearing that she is planning something dangerous. Daphne assures that she does not intend to befriend black magicians, but on the contrary, wants to destroy them. She warns that luck will not always be on their side, because no one knows what will happen next. Daphne's eyes flash with anger when she hears the word lucky. The girl, overcome with anger, suggests testing which is stronger luck or her own skill. Daphne declares with determination that she is capable of doing what she has planned, despite the man's protests. Teddy exclaims Daphne's name, shocked by her behavior. The green-haired boy is worried that the girl is still weak and should not leave her bed. A look of concern and sympathy crosses Teddy's face as he looks at Daphne. Daphne notices Befera with surprise and turns to her. Arius is shocked and asks why Befera is here, while Daphne watches what is happening. The red Befera quickly explains to Arius that this is not the problem at all, but he does not immediately understand her concern. The green-haired girl worries about Daphne, reminding her that she recently lost consciousness and that Arius feels unnoticed. Befera takes potions out of her bag to help her friend regain her strength. Befera hopefully hands Daphne a vial of potion, wanting to help her friend. The girl asks if Befera learned how to make potions from Tate, but she admits that she always made them her own way. Daphne looks closely at the potion, deciding to try its effect. The white Befera is worried because she expected that her potion would be considered useless and thrown away. Daphne curiously wonders what effect the potion will have, holding the vial in her hand. Tate, smiling, tells Befera that from this day on she will become her teacher. Bifera, with surprise and slight anxiety, clarifies who exactly will be teaching her. The guy with green hair admits that he doesn't like people, but makes an exception for the girl, because if he trains her well, he will finally be able to leave. He proposes to work together to achieve a common goal. In Befera's memories, an image of her mother appears, filled with light and warmth. The girl with green hair remembers how her mother gently stroked her head, and her eyes fill with tenderness. Befera watches her friend's reaction with excitement. The green-haired girl rushes to give Daphne more potions to keep her healthy. Daphne carefully studies the composition and properties of each potion, memorizing their effects. Bifera happily adds another potion to her gift collection. Realizing she's gone a bit overboard, Befera sheepishly offers to take the potions back if they're not needed. The green-haired girl is relieved to hear words of gratitude and holds back tears of joy. Befera happily agrees, and Daphne accepts her care. Arius watches their communication. The red-haired boy indignantly demands attention, not wanting to be ignored. Befera is embarrassed and surprised that he and Daphne seem close. The green-haired girl thanks Daphne for fulfilling her request and for the gift, which is very valuable to her. Arius listens with slight confusion as Befera calls Daphne an exemplary older sister. Bifera anxiously asks if she can finish her explanation, and Daphne allows it, but asks that it be brief. The girl with green hair smiles, happy to share her knowledge. Arius watches what is happening and feels that their company resembles a real family. The boy asks since when Bifera has been practicing alchemy and asks if her potions are safe. Bifera assures that she tested all the potions on herself and their effect is truly significant. Bifera tells how she cut herself with a knife and poured the potion on the wound to test its effect. She remembers taking the potion after heavy training and when she had completely used up her mana to recover faster. The green-haired girl claims with slight excitement that the effects of the potions are indeed good. Daphne and Arius are confused, and Bifera begins to doubt whether she did something wrong. Arius checks to see if the knights really intend to train at the same intensity every day and receives confirmation. Daphne notes that under such a regime the knights will lose consciousness from fatigue, and Arius agrees that they will have little stamina, mana, and many wounds. The knights, lying on the ground after grueling training, doubt whether it is really safe, but some consider them resilient and fit for purpose. Arius happily notes that the three of them haven't gotten together for a long time and is glad to see Bifera outside the room. Bifera sheepishly agrees that they are good together and dreams of her brother joining them. Friends laugh and hug, enjoying the moment of unity and warmth. Daphne looks at her friends with tenderness and gratitude, feeling happiness.